Hello everybody, this is another drawing and talking video. I decided to do something different even though I didn't finish the image on the left. This time I'm going to actually do something that may require your attention from time to time. Namely, I am actually going to show you the sketching process for my comic series. So when I start, I do a sketch before I do any more line work on top of that. So on this page, there are a few things that I wanted to do as a part of the story. First thing is I need to introduce the new character. And the second thing is establish the protagonist's reaction to this character. The new character is called Icarus, by the way. It's a bit of a cheap name, but it will do for the story. Specifically, the protagonist should show a sign of distrust towards this person, while Icarus will extend a hand of friendship towards the protagonist. Also, there should be exposition about the sun, namely that it's a source of experience in the video game sense as in EXP. So these are the things I wish to accomplish with this page. I'm going to put them on the spare page here. Now I am going to plan out the panels. I'm just thinking right now, how many panels would these take? So first one, introducing the new character, probably will need a largish panel with the new character being right in the middle and confronting the protagonist. These sketches are not proportionally correct, but it will serve to show me what I am trying to accomplish. Of course, this character is characteristically defined by these huge wings. If you look at the panel here, you can see the protagonist is trying to sneak up on Icarus, only to be discovered by him first. I'm trying to see what angle would actually work if Icarus suddenly showed up behind the protagonist. Where would the cube-shaped thing that the protagonist is hiding behind be in relation to the rest of the scene? I'm guessing something here. This would be the corner, and the protagonist's head would be right here, facing in this direction, which means the neck is here. This feels a bit clumsy. Let me try to move things around a bit. I'm just trying to space out everything in a visually pleasant manner. But if I'm going to be consistent, the protagonist is actually shorter than the block, so I should show that as well. Maybe I will just do this and hope that my readers will understand that this is the cover the protagonist was using. It's funny how the protagonist doesn't have an official name, while Icarus does. Personally, when I'm not recording videos, I pronounce that name Icarus. But I guess since I'm releasing this video to be to the public, I should be conforming to the common pronunciation of that name. Just trying to make some fine adjustment on how to structure the lines of the cube. Something like this, I guess. I'm going to move the protagonist a little more towards the corner, so that the new character will have a bit of a central stage. Of course, the new character's entrance probably wouldn't look so stiffened. But this is still a sketch. Alright. Here is a bit of dialogue. So that is purpose number 1 complete. We introduced the new character in a confrontational kind of way. The protagonist should be reacting with shock in this image. That sets up for the distrust element. I'm going to put a few panels here. Also, I will use a skewed border for the panel separation, because personally I think that highlights tension, or at least dynamism. Sometimes I don't really like the tool I'm using. Maybe this will be enough. In the first one, I will show the protagonist looking concerned. Trying to find a way to place the character's face so as to not have the top part obscured. But I also want to show the protagonist gripping her gun in order to show her tenseness and distrust. Maybe that will be good. Also, I need to actually take some time to learn perspective, so that I can show the foreshortening better. Now, how to hold your weapon in this situation. I'm going to say not pointing directly at the enemy, because you have already been discovered, so doing that is probably not a smart idea. Probably better to try to look harmless. Similarly, anatomy is not exactly my strong suit, similar to how I don't really understand perspective. If you haven't noticed, all of my art is self-taught. Well, I did take a few fundamental lessons, but those lessons pretty much had no effect on me whatsoever. Let me see, I'm just adjusting my own hand to see how would a person hold a weapon in this situation. If you actually took the time to read my comic, you can see that the design of this weapon had a few variations throughout the series because I wasn't trying to be consistent for the sake of innovation. Taking advantage of the straight line tool to draw the barrel of the gun. That looks okay. Face will probably be pointed in this direction. And the scope of the sniper rifle. Personally, not a gun expert, so I'm not sure if you can actually hold a sniper rifle in your hand like that. Excuse me. In case you don't understand what happened, I just coughed. I might have edited that out of the video. This one don't really need any dialogue. Here is the face of Icarus, or Icarus. So, this image right here shows the protagonist's distrust of the new character, and the next one should show that Icarus is very composed, despite having a gun pointed in his general direction. Also, this is the masculine body type I was talking about. I decided to go for a rather ridiculously exaggerated take on the chest. Maybe this is too large. This where the belt would be, I'm guessing. I will have to look at reference images to make sure that the position of his arms look relaxed rather than aggressive or tense. But I'm not sure if that's possible with such a ridiculous looking shoulder, because you would expect someone to be on alert if their arms are hanging far away from their body. I guess no need to put in too much detail, but might as well, since I enjoy drawing this. Well, that's strange. Sorry about what happened there. You may or may not notice, but there was a little technical hiccup that caused it impossible for me to zoom, so I had to restart the session. But if I edited it just right, you wouldn't know what happened. Anyways, so the panel I just finished shows that the new character, Icarus, is unfazed by the protagonist's approach, and it's a reaction out of peacefulness rather than a confidence in his own strength, although that would also play a part in why he's so confident. Now I'm not sure if I should be adding dialogue here or not, so I will just move on to the next panel. Let's see. We still have the exposition to do, so because it's related to the sun, I'm going to put the sun down here as a background element. This will probably be where the protagonist is. Maybe this is a little too large, we may not have enough room for that. I don't want to have too much close-ups because I use that technique a little too much in this series. Here would be Icarus. We know that he has to explain the mechanism of the sun at some point, so there's going to be dialogue in this panel for sure. Basically, the sun is something where, by virtue of being near it, you gain passive experience, and it will be explained later how exactly that works. I'm not sure if a dramatically hyper-masculine body would have legs that look like this, but that's the best I can do. Let me give the character a stereotypically explanatory hand gesture. I'm just looking at my own hand for reference, and I'm guessing the thumb will go here for the right hand. Also, I think it serves as a dual purpose that he would extend his palm like this, because in part it shows a gesture of offering. So it's basically saying, hey, here is a bit of resource, you can have it too. And also as a sign of peacefulness, because people show their empty hands to signal that they are not carrying a weapon. I'm guessing this is the psychological symbols that are involved in this image. I'm not really a psychologist. You could have guessed that. But I did know a little bit about psychological symbols. The idea that there are concepts that are shared by human beings in general. The gesture of the fingers doesn't look exactly correct, but I'm pretty confident about my ability to draw hands, so not going to sweat too much over that. We will have the wings folded in a iconically angelic way to further reinforce the imagery of, I don't know, goodness. It's hard to find a specific word to describe the kind of goodness I'm talking about. Also, the geometry of the wing is actually more complicated than it seems. There is the additional concern that these characters are actually walking in space. So maybe Icarus' legs shouldn't look so straight and stiff. Let me try something else. This looks a bit more like flying. Yeah, I think this is much better. Alright. Let me finish off the rest of these wings and move on to the costume. The costume is loosely based on my reference images of ancient Greek robes. But of course I'm not going to draw all of those crazy folded cloth, so here is a bit of a more simplified design. Maybe that is the reason why so many anime characters have belts. I'm beginning to regret a bit about my decision to add this hanging piece of fabric in front of his crotch, because it blocks up so many interesting anatomy details. Not in that way. Also, as far as my reference image went, the ancient Greeks, when they didn't wear robes that hang all the way down to their ankles, they wore something like skirts, regardless of sex. As it turns out, trying to give a character both cape and wings is a little more challenging than I thought. But I don't think it's as challenging as making their faces consistent. I may have talked about it in the deleted video, but I find more trouble in drawing consistent character face than in hands. That may or may not be something that most artists struggle with. I know that many have problems drawing hands, but I feel like they are okay. Alright, let's see. I think we finished this. Let's just finish it off with some dialogue. Let's see. Well, I can't really orchestrate a dialogue when I'm talking to you, so I would put exposition here. Okay. Let me flesh out the details for the first panel a bit. The first thing to determine is whether or not I want the character in this exact location of the panel. Probably will look better if I followed the rule of thirds, and actually it looks pretty nice to rotate the character a bit, like this. But I don't want too much parallelism between the character's line of action and this thing over here. So let me erase the torso for now. But of course I mean the entire body except for the head. I want there to be a protruding chest and bent waist. Maybe something like this will work. The idea is that the new character is landing from flight right behind the character, but since there is no actual ground for him to land on, I have to extrapolate a bit. How does this look? A little strange. Alright. I'm just trying to figure out what would somebody look like if they suddenly landed on a flat ground. So, looks like I'm correct about the curvature of the arm going in this direction. I'm guessing that the desired pose is somewhere between these two images. Let's try making it look a little more like the first one. So, you would expect outstretched arms and forearms that are bent downward. Sorry if I'm not talking much, I'm just trying to concentrate. Probably not a good idea since the purpose of this video is for your entertainment, and you're not concerned whether or not I finish this drawing. Also, I'm guessing in this pose you wouldn't expect the legs to be so closely tucked together. A normal human being's thigh is almost as long as their torso. You can easily check that by simply trying to hug your knees. You can see that your knees go almost all the way up to your shoulders, so that means your thigh is almost as long as your torso. Maybe I should just get rid of this one for now. This speech bubble. I like the legs in this drawing much more now. Some things still don't look quite correct. It feels like the lower body is too large, and there is almost a feminine quality in the way I drew the lower part of the body, which is not intended. I may need to look at reference photos for this one. Also, I should be thinking ahead, how would this pose transition to this one here? Well, the connection really isn't that strong. let me try something completely different. Because what I'm doing right now is still a bit too terrestrial, if that makes any sense. As in, it's still a bit too realistic. So my current approach is trying to make the entrance a little more abstract and unearthly. So the way you would expect a supernatural being to suddenly come into a backyard, you wouldn't expect them to land like somebody who just fell off the roof. But they would still somehow look like they just landed, rather than having suddenly materialized standing upright. Maybe like this. In this series, I deliberately try to avoid using speed lines to show motion, because I wanted to challenge myself by trying to show all the actions using body language and image alone. So if I draw something ambiguous, it will be difficult to tell whether or not the new character entered by landing from above or by rising from below. This pose in particular looks like he just emerged from some depth rather than having descended from a height. I still think I'm correct in using arms that is bending downward to showcase descend rather than ascend. Now this funny pose. Now it's looking a bit more like a sudden descent. Kind of reminds me of the classically gothic novels where they would portray vampires to look like this, suddenly coming down in front of the viewers, capes flapping behind their back. By the way, if you didn't know, the word Gothic actually refers to some of the novels written by people 100 years ago. Would this be helpful? I never thought a pose like this would take so long, but I guess it's what must be done. In this case, I'm guessing I also need to redo the torso a bit. The chest would still be more prominent than the abdomen. Even though I don't want to overdo it, there still should be some asymmetry in the legs. Now it looks a bit more like a descent. accept the whole imagery now have a bit of a sinister vibe to it, since we typically consider large winged humanoid things who descend to be antagonistic, even though it's not the idea here. Maybe it will work out in my favor in creating a bit of a cognitive dissonance, where the pose of the character reminds you of something evil, whereas the design of the character is supposed to be something bright and righteous. It's hard to say something looks righteous, but we associate images of angels and things like that to be righteous. I think that's the best I can do for now. Some final adjustment on the way the legs work. I will still need to add some final touches to the proportions in this image, but for now, I think that's pretty good. So, thanks for watching, and goodbye.